Shalom, and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of our weekly Rashi study class with Rabbi Rebecca Schatz.
Hello, everyone. Hi. Good morning. How y'all doing? There are lots of different responses to who the author is. Some people, I think it was Larry last week who said it's a work of journalism. And so I don't know that I've ever seen that it's attributed to one particular person. Let me see. I know that there are lots of different, right. So there are lots of different hypotheses around the different characters in Megillat Esther having been authors. She has. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a tradition that Mordechai and Esther recorded the events because that's what it says at the end of the Megillah. Mordechai and Esther recorded the events, which is what it says at the end of the Megillah. But there's no, I mean, it's silly to say there's no proof, but but the idea that we assume is that because of the end of the Megillah, where it says that these things were written down, that Esther wrote these things down, and that Mordechai. Marshall, can you I can't see who that is, but can you let whoever that person is in? Oh, Rick, maybe. Yeah. Do I have to let them in? Oh, I can let them in. Sorry. Wow. I'm the Zoom master. So that's the answer. I think there's different, again, because of the end of the Hierarch, because of the end of the Megillah itself. That's what we believe, but I don't know that there's any other historical reference to who potentially could have written the Megillah.
Benji Siegel says the author's time and place are slightly more difficult to determine. The book itself is retrospective, looking back at earlier events.
Right.
The reign of Ahasuerus is treated as ancient history. The author knew. Sorry.
Okay, we haven't really started, but you can.
Okay. The author knew Persian as reflected by terminology and names, and he identifies the courtiers in Xerxes' reign, or knew enough Persian to create authentic sounding names. The book includes some late biblical Hebrew terms. Further, the king is identified in a way that distinguishes him from Xerxes II in 424 BCE, placing him after that date. I mean, so.
Well, yeah, the traditional answer is that they wrote it because the end of the Megillah says that they.
According to Baba Batra, Baba Batra, it was written by Knesset Gdolah.
Right, which just means a lot of people came together and wrote stuff down. Yeah,
or possibly it was written out by Lady Groggerdown.
Lady who?
Groggerdown.
Oh, is that?
That's our Purim spiel.
I was just gonna say, is that a take on Bridgerton?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I was like, wait a minute. It's too early for these jokes, everyone. Hello. Okay. Let's. Oh, sorry, Larry.
Just one last. The serious question is:
yes.
Do we have evidence that it was actually originally written in Hebrew? I think we do.
I mean, it's late enough that one would have assumed that it would have been written in Hebrew. Proof meaning like found documents, or proof. What do you mean by?
Well, what Benji says, I think, is linguistically it has late Hebrew language, which would prove that it wasn't written earlier.
Right.
And then also he says it's using Persian, I assume, ancient Farsi names or variants.
Right.
So the sort of thing that John McWhorter would do in terms of what a linguist would do to say what the original language was. And I think, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think that I read that it is a Hebrew document, correct. Unlike other books, some books of the Bible, which are not originally written in Hebrew.
Yeah. Right. Correct. 100%. Like there are other books of the Bible that we know for a fact were written in the language they were written in, whether it's because we found documents or because it's clear based off the syntax isn't really the word that I'm looking for, but the way that it was written that it's clear that that's that there's proof for that having been the language without it being changed. Okay, we're gonna get started here. I just want to show you the different books. I told you that I got some Megillot that of course arrived. Nope. Thank you. Oh, it says I am recording. I guess I'm recording. Okay. So when Larry asked if I was recording and I said no, I lied. So here are some books that I got. No one has to get these books. I just want you to know that I got them and I think they're interesting. There's still one on the way, of course, because why have them all by the second class? So this is just a commentary. Let me take my blur off so that people on Zoom can see. It's called Understanding Megillat Esther, and it's Ibn Caspi's commentary on the book of Esther. So it's not Rashi, but it's a different commentary that I potentially will draw from if Rashi has less than interesting things to say. So this is one book. If you're interested, feel free to pass them around. This is another one. This is specifically with Rashi's commentary, so I'm going to try to use a little bit of this today. This is very firmly called Megillas Esther with Rashi's commentary. And as you can see on the inside, for those of you who can see it, and I can pass it around if you want, it has the Megillah on the top, also in an English translation, which I actually haven't looked at, so I don't know how it lines up with what we've been looking at in Sefaria. And then Rashi and Rashi's script. How many people here can read Rashi's script? Okay, great. I love Rashi's script. When I was in third grade, we learned it at Sinai Akiba, and I was such a nerd that I went home the first day that they gave us the book of Rashi's script, and I finished the whole workbook. I was very excited by it. And then I became a rabbi. Okay, and then this is Rashi. It says elucidated, but it's just like extra pieces from the Rashi commentary. So if you're interested in having something specific on Rashi, but then like expanded on Rashi, you can see this. This is just a fun book. This is just a fun book that I thought would be interesting to see pictures, since the Torah doesn't have pictures. And neither do the Megillot. I guess that's what we're looking at. But this is created by Koren, but it's the graphic novel of Megillat Esther. And so just so you can see, the verse that we're going to start with today and potentially move on from is on this page. So just so you can see some of the different visuals here that they have, which I think is just a very interesting way of, it's another way of learning, is by being able to see someone's interpretation based off of pictures. So, and then I have one more coming that I'll show you next week. Rick Muller has a question about this, or maybe not.
You're so fast to notice. I just put my hand up. Is that illustrated one? Is that the one where they don't show Esther's face? The only face is Zeresh because she's the bad guy, but they don't show Esther's face. It's just her hand pointing at the king. I saw one Megillah that way, an Orthodox one where they didn't want to show the visage, the face of a Jewish woman, but they can show the bad one. Anyway.
Oh, you mean because it's a from book?
Yes, yeah.
Oh no, I don't think so. Her face is on the front cover.
Esther?
At least I assume that's her.
Yeah, I saw a version where they only showed Zeresh, but not Esther.
I mean, I know I'm being recorded, but I don't think Koren is that from. So I think it's okay. Yeah, no, she's all over here. There's lots of her. Here she is.
You should see the centerfold.
That was a comment for another time. Okay. Okay.
Good for Purim, though.
Thank you, Elon. All right, so we were on verse 2 of chapter 1, moving right along. Purim's next week, so I think we might finish by today. Just kidding. We're not. We're not finishing the Megillah today. Okay, so I just want to remind us of the verse that we looked at last week, and then I want us to look actually at the Talmud piece from Megillah, from Masechet Megillah. Because we looked at the Rashi, which what's the word? Opens up the piece from Masechet Megillah. So we're going to look at that today. So if you have, I brought the source sheets back if you want them. I'm also going to share it on my screen here for people who are on Zoom. So if you don't want the sheet in front of you, but you want to be able to see it, it'll be on the screen behind you all. Give me 35 seconds to do this. Okay. Verse 2.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's tons of them. Yeah. Okay. So looking at verse 2, it says, Bayamim hahem keshevet hamelech Achashverosh al kiseh malchuto asher b'Shushan habira. So one of the things that we talked a lot about is the fact that this really claims for us who this guy was, when he reigned, and really how he reigned. We talked a lot about whether this was something that was given to him based off of his DNA, right, based off of the family that he came from, or if this was something that he assumed in his own right because of his abilities to lead. So Rashi then says, I'm just going to do this very quickly because we did it last week, when the kingdom was firmly established under his control, but then the rabbis explain it differently in Masechet Megillah. So Rashi seems to think that it's very much because of his ability as a person himself, but the rabbis seem to think about it in a different way. Does someone who has a microphone near them want to read for us from Masechet Megillah? You can read it in either language, it doesn't matter. It's Hebrew until the last 4 words, where you get some Aramaic. Does anybody want to read the Masechet Megillah? Okay, Marshall.
Vayabim hahem keshevet hamelech uchtiv batre bishnat shalosh lemolcho Amar Rava ma keshevet.
Okay, so can you just tell us, either read the translation or just tell us what we just read?
Yeah, the second verse in Esther states, in those days, when the king Achashverosh sat on the throne of his kingdom, Esther 1, chapter 1, verse 2, implying that the events to follow took place during the first year of his reign. And 1 verse afterward it is written, in the 3rd year of his reign, indicating that it was the 3rd year, not the first. Rava said there is no contradiction. What is the meaning of when he sat?
Okay.
Keshevet?
Great. So I'm sure you all know this. I'm just going to say it to make sure that we're on the same page, literally. When we look at something from the Talmud, especially if it's from Safaria, the bolded black is the original text from Masechet Megillah. The non-bolded text is Steinsaltz's commentary. So what you're seeing here, we read far fewer words in the original than what Marshall read in the translation, because Steinsaltz is trying to explain for us in English what we just read in the Gemara. So now we're at the Mai Keshevet. What does it mean when he sat? So that's where Marshall's at right now in the Megillah. I mean, in the Talmud.
Okay, so what is the meaning of when he sat, Keshevet? It is after his mind was settled, Shenit Yashva, and he overcame his anxiety and worry with regard to the redemption of the Jewish people. He said to himself as follows, Belshazzar, the king of Babylonia, calculated and erred with regard to the Jewish people's redemption. I too will calculate, but I will not err.
Okay, so just so that we see what the words are in the Megillah, in the Masechet Megillah. Sorry, I'm going to keep making that mistake. It says here, right? Belshazzar chashev ute'ah, right? He thought and he made a mistake. So interestingly, then what Steinsaltz is telling us is that this was in regard to the people being redeemed, right? But really all the Talmud is telling us is that he thought about something and then he seemed to believe that he made a mistake, bless you, or that a mistake was then made. And then we get that little piece of Aramaic at the end, ana chashvena velo te'ena. So it really means I will then think and I will not err. It's using the same words, but now flipping them into the negative as opposed to the positive. Yeah, Marshall.
Doesn't the word chashevna mean to calculate and not to think?
Yeah. So it can't, right. So we are translated here as calculate, and the idea is that he is mulling over in his mind something. It seems to be that Steinsaltz believes that this is because of the people's redemption. What I was just trying to point out in the Aramaic and the Hebrew is that the same words are then being used, one in the positive that he did do something, and then one in the negative that he's going to do it, but that he's not going to then err. So then moving it into the negative. Yeah, Barry. Is there another microphone somewhere for Barry?
No, there it is. So what I'm seeing is that there was the prophecy of 70 years that the Jewish people would be returned from the Babylonian exile, and Ahasuerus calculates it's just beyond the 70 years, and it hasn't happened, so he's safe. So now he can settle, but
Yeah. So what can someone give me a general idea of your take on how is the Masechet, how is the Talmud, how are the rabbis explaining differently than Rashi what this piece of text from the Megillah means? We're really focusing on the Keshevet piece, though the Dibur HaMatchil is using the whole phrase, Be'amim ha'em Keshevet HaMelech. What is the Talmud adding or contradicting from Rashi? Diane, did you have your hand up? Okay. Joel? Barry? You're all looking at me like you have something to say.
the other part of what I had read was that on what is he sitting? And originally he apparently the Solomon's throne had been taken by the Egyptians, then it was taken by Babylonians, and then Ahasuerus took it into there, and somehow he couldn't figure out how to use his throne properly, so he had his own throne created. So now he's at his third year. He's now sitting on a throne that he had created.
Great. So, okay. Do you want to say something, Leonard?
Well, I saw it differently, that Rashi is saying that Ahasuerus acted when the kingdom was firmly established.
Mm-hmm.
And the Megillah says that he acted when he himself felt secure in his position.
Great. So that's really, I think that's how I understood it as well. And I think that's really important to understand. Do you have your hand up, Stevie? Okay, you just give it back, okay?
Well, just to clarify, they both think that Keshevet means when he's firmly established as opposed to when he just arrived at the throne. Right. What the Talmud is adding that Rashi doesn't seem to find as pshat is that the reason for that is not internal to Persian politics, but has to do with, prophecies about the Jews.
Right. And I think in addition to what Leonard is sharing, it also has to do internally with himself, right? It has to do with what Ahasuerus was feeling internally and not just experiencing externally, right? That, the time had come, right? Whether that's because people understood it that way or history is now recalling it that way, whatever the case may be. But what the rabbis are explaining in the Talmud seems to be that it wasn't just that he was settled there because people believed that it was time for him to be settled, but also because he had gotten over whatever he needed to get over to now be king and to be sitting on his throne, which obviously, we can't ask the rabbis of the Talmud where they got this from in terms of, are they projecting their own, experiences of leadership or what have you. But in terms of the human experience, you hope that a person who comes to power is both seen as ready by the people who they will be reigning over, and also they themselves feel ready to take it on, which is what the Talmud seems to be adding here. Yeah, Larry.
Forgive me if I missed it.
Yeah.
Or you all know your Daniel much better than I do, because I don't know Daniel at all. And this is I think it's really interesting.
Yeah.
So who's Belshazzar? So Belshazzar was the son, I think, of Nebuchadnezzar, right? And he was overthrown. He was overthrown by whom? By the Persians. And apparently, I don't know this, I just looked it up.
Yeah.
Apparently he was overthrown when he held a banquet. So it seems to me that the Talmud is actually projecting, saying that what Achashverosh knew the downfall of Belshazzar, and he knows that he's about to hold this banquet, and knows that this banquet might have been his downfall.
Right.
And so what it's inferring, I think, is in order to avoid it, he set in motion all the events to blame Haman as opposed to blaming Achashverosh. I mean, that's going a long way, but it seems to me that the banquet connection is the key here. But now we got to go read Daniel.
Right. And for our next class, yeah. You have a microphone near you? Oh, Leonard, can you hand? Thank you.
Larry, who were you saying had planned the banquet to be blamed on Haman? I wasn't quite clear on the pronoun.
Sorry.
So in the Talmud it says that at least the Steinsaltz, the Steinsaltz interpolation of the Talmud, Belshazzar, the king of Babylonia, and I'm going to add the son of Nebuchadnezzar, who was overthrown after holding a banquet, calculated and erred. He made a calculation, he erred with regard to the Jewish people's redemption. I don't know that part of the story. I too will calculate, so in having my banquet and knowing that there's going to be this plot against me, but I will not err. And I'm inferring that he, Belshazzar, is saying, blame, I'll put Haman to be in the position that I can blame him.
Did that answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we're gonna go on, but I just wanted you to see this because I think it's important, especially in a later text. I think it's important to recognize that there are two people on Zoom who want to say something. Okay, so hold on one second. I didn't see it before. I think it's important for us to realize that in later texts, we're going to get a bit more humanity, I think, in terms of what the characters were feeling or what we could actually project that they might have been feeling. Of course, we can do the same thing with the Torah and with the earliest texts in the Torah. But because we believe that humans actually wrote this down, and then it was close to the time that other humans were commenting on it than other texts, perhaps, it allows us to see a bit more of this type of interpretation come out. So I wanted to start off by sharing some of that. Okay, very quickly, Norm and then Rick.
I think there's a big difference between occupying Shushan and taking over the central government and calling yourself king or emperor and actually having control of the entire empire. So 3 years after he declares himself to be the emperor, he feels confident finally that he has subjugated any opposing forces. All of the remaining nobility is going to be loyal to him. He can invite them to a banquet and be confident that he's not about to be overthrown. That doesn't happen the moment he first seems to take power. It takes quite a bit of time.
Sure.
That's still true to this very day. We can look at Syria as an example of a place where a new government came to power and they really haven't completely consolidated their control yet. And that's a much smaller place than the entire Persian Empire.
Sure. Interesting point. Yeah, Rick, very quickly.
Just the trope on al kisei malchuto, the yativ there really dramatically highlights it's all about the throne, not even necessarily the person, but who's sitting on that throne, and that's what Haman is accused of going for when we get to the big scene. Anyway, and then I like the rhyme of Rashi, the chashevna and the ta'ena. I just wanted to point out I think Rashi was going for the rhyme there. He could have used all sorts of words, but he made it rhyme. So just thought I'd point that out.
Yeah, the Talmud piece, those last four words have that rhyme to them. I think, unfortunately, that just has to do with the Aramaic. But we're going to go with that it was a beautiful, intentional piece because I like your interpretation better. Diane, did you want to say something? Okay, great. We're going to get to the third verse because Diane really wants us to. Okay, that's the only reason, though. Okay. So as you can see, by the way, I'm going to always share with you all of the Rashi on any of these verses. And as you can see on the third verse here, there is a very small Rashi, but that's it. So some of the verses that we're going to look at together are not going to have much Rashi, and that's part of what I think is also interesting about doing Megillah versus Chumash in terms of how much our commentators chose to comment, or how much they felt the need to give to us. But I just wanted to point that out here first because it's going to happen a few times. But this is the first place, and for the next few verses, Rashi is just not as prominent. Okay, the third verse. Does someone want to read it for us in the Hebrew? Yeah, Leonard, go ahead. And then just translate as you go, if you can.
Why don't I translate after?
Great, that also works.
בשנת שלוש למלכו עשה משתה לכל שריו ועבדיו, חיל פרס ומדי, הפרטמים ושרי המדינות לפניו. Okay, and so in the third year of his reign, he made a festival for all of his officials and servants, and the army, noble, well, whatever, the chayil for us, perhaps. Umadei, let's see now, the governors of the provinces in his service.
Persia and Media.
Great. Yeah. So Paras is Persia and Madai is Media. So I'm just going to read it all just once in English, just so we can have it all together. In the third year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all the officials and the courtiers. Right. So that's Sarav ve'avadav, which we might translate as like those working in the kingdom, including slaves, right? Officials and courtiers makes it sound very nice, but people who were working there potentially because they wanted to and potentially not because they wanted to. So the administration of Persia and Media, the nobles and the governors of the provinces in his service. Okay, so first, yes, Matt. Yes. Suggest away.
That the use of the word mishteh indicates a drinking party. It's not.
Yes, correct.
Not just a festival.
Great. So I was just.
It's principally a drinking party.
Great, exactly. So I was just about to get. That was the question I was going to ask. So thank you for answering it. So the first question I was going to ask was, when you look at this, this is the reason why learning something in the original is so interesting if you can, because the English just says banquet, but that's the rated G version. What it doesn't want you to know is that by saying mishteh, they might not have been eating anything, right? It was just a way to come together to drink. Lishtot, right, is the word that this comes from. So the idea here is to asam mishteh, is to create a drinking party, right? They were all going to some kind of, college party before they were going to a football game. So that's what was happening here. And so the idea of a banquet is, what I'm going to call it when I go to the ECC in an hour, but that's not really what it was. It might have been, to Larry's point, the type of thing that was happening in courts all the time, which was there was a lot of drinking and a lot of eating. But the fact that the word mishteh is used is quite interesting and very intentional, right? It's not just there's lots of other words for party. Yeah, Marshall.
I'd like to again share the translation of Robert Alter.
Yeah, great. Go for it.
Footnote, which is quite illuminating.
Great.
He made a great banquet in the presence for all his ministers and his servants, the freeholders of Persia and Media, the noblemen and the ministers of the province, when he showed the wealth of his kingdom's glory. freeholders, the Hebrew term chayil means military force, but also refers to wealth, as in the book of Ruth. And the latter meaning is more likely here. So Alter is taking the position, this is not military people who are there,
Right.
but wealthy people.
Right, right. Which potentially was one and the same, but we know that the people who were coming to this were not just regular, slums of the city, but rather people who had something to contribute. Seth, do you have a hand? Yeah, go ahead.
It makes me think of Herodotus when he's talking about the Persian Empire. He brings up that when official government decisions were made, there were drinking parties. The leadership would get drunk at night and just talk things out. And then in the morning, when they were sober, they would vote on them. So it could be just like a...
sounds like a great board meeting. We should do that.
It could be a drinking party for fun. It could be official government business. I don't know.
And it's interesting, all jokes aside, if you are coming together to make decisions, you would think that was the worst possible way to do it, right? But the one thing that allows for is some type of at least fictional camaraderie that you're creating, such that then when the decisions are being made, you have some type of relationship with these people that has been cultivated, I guess, in such an environment, such that now maybe those decisions will more easily land, especially for those who are unhappy with whatever the decision might be. Yeah, Paul.
The other possible interpretation is I read a management guru many years ago, I can't remember who it was, saying that when the optimum way to discuss something is first discuss it drunk, then discuss it sober, or maybe it was the other way around.
Yeah. Yeah. When I think that's partially what Seth was explaining also. Yeah, Diane.
So, so if we want to look at the historical, what might have actually happened, Herodotus writes that in 483 BCE, Xerxes, it was the third year of his reign. He had a large meeting planning a future battle against Greece.
Right.
And in the first 2 years, he had put down rebellions in Egypt and Babylonia. So that goes back to the verse before about why he was more settled.
Right, right. Oh, this is my phone. Wow, never happens. How do I turn that off? Yeah, Larry, go for it. Sorry, Barry.
Two things. Can we jump to Rashi?
Yeah, go for it. Do you want to read it for us first?
Sure.
It's 4 words.
It is.
Good luck.
Apartamim shiltonim bilshon paras. So he's saying that the word partinim is governors in the Persian language.
Right.
So the BDB agrees with that. And the BDB says, I got this here, sorry, that it's nobles, a loan word from Old Persian. Thank you, Stevie, for telling me that's what Old Pers meant. So my question is, how did Rashi know that? How does Rashi know the linguistic oranges of all that? My other general comment is, I'm overwhelmed in just going through the first 3 verses, because I'd always assumed that Esther was simply a comical book, not based on any real history, but with some historical characters. And yet we're finding just in the first 3 verses all these historical connections.
Yeah.
That changes my view of the entire book.
Well, that was my whole point. So we can just stop here, and then for the next 5.5 months, you can all go on your merry way. But yes, I think that one of the things that's so important, I think, about this holiday and in reading this Megillah is that it comes from a place of not just learning how we as a people should stand up and not, be threatened by others, et cetera, anti-Semitism, of course, but that there's real history rooted here that's being told through the lens of a story that any age can understand, right? It's exactly what Pixar, I think, it's not Disney, I'm pretty sure it's Pixar, creates movies that adults can understand on a different level than children, but everybody can enjoy the movie experience, right? That's what Megillat Esther is doing. It's allowing for kids to understand that there's, a party and there's a princess and there's a this and there's a that, right? It's all very fun. And when I go to the ECC, they're all going to know the story. But when adults read it, to your point, Larry, there's almost subtext, even though it's not really subtext, but there's a general understanding for us of what's going on that brings us both into history, but also just into modern day relevance for how this is something that really should be taken seriously and not just be a holiday about drinking and dressing up and thinking of it as like frivolity. Did you want to say something to it? And then Barry, because I took the microphone away from him.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to comment on another aspect of the verse itself, or is the inclusion of Persia and Media, because the Persians and the Medians were closely related Indo-European groups, and the royal line issued from both of those groups.
Right.
So the fact that they're bringing them together, not the other provinces in India, but them together, is like a consolidation, bringing everyone in who matters, so to speak.
And if we look back at the map that I gave you, you can see where Persia and Media were. Yeah, Rebecca.
Because it kind of relates, I'm sorry.
No, it's good.
But there could be an interpretation of this word, instead of it meaning noble people, is that it's that
the Partamim. Yes, I was just going to say that. Exactly. So no, it's okay. I'm glad you pointed it out. So if you look at the map that I gave you, let me pull it up for the people who are on Zoom. Now, accuracy is, in the eye of the beholder, and this kind of, when we're looking at this kind of thing, because this is obviously not a modern day map. But if you look at the language, so this is to get back to your point, Larry. When you look at the language here, you see Persians, right? You see Paras, Umadai, you see Medes up here, which is what I assume when we say Media, I assume that's where they're talking about. And then it says Hapartamim. Now, when you look at, and I'm sure Rick would have something to say about this in terms of the trope, but when you look at it, you don't think that all three of those things go together, right? The way that it's written out in the Hebrew, the way that it's written with the trope, it seems like parasumadai, comma, or even period or semicolon, hapartamim v'sarei hamedinot lefanav, right? It looks like the partamim goes with the end of the sentence. But to Rebecca's point, when you look at the map, it looks like it could also be all three of those sections that had people who were then coming to this banquet, drinking party, whatever you want to call it. And that's a very interesting thing to note, because of course we're over here. We're in this little orange zone here, where it says Susa, which for us is Shushan. And so it's a very large amount of space also that was bringing people together to then come to this one banquet. But I just wanted to point that out, because when Larry said, how does Rashi know this? First of all, I have no idea. And second of all, maybe he didn't, right? Maybe he was pointing to a location, assuming that if they spoke the Persian language, that's what governors meant. Who knows, right? I don't know how Rashi knew that, but it's also possible that he was wrong, because Rashi can be, and that we were just talking about this space on the map. Okay, Barry, you've been waiting patiently.
Well, the area that they're coming from is even much larger than that. The 127 provinces went all the way from Egypt, which is not on this map, all the way east to India, which is also not on this map. It took a long time for people, the leaders from all those hundreds of provinces, to come to Shusha for this banquets. It had to be more than a drinking party. This is a great formality to bring everybody there.
So interestingly, I don't think that they were all coming. It seems like this was a very specific banquet for these people, but that you are correct that he had reign over all of those places, which was a much larger scope of land. It seems pretty specific here, though, that for this particular banquet, for whatever reason, it was just these 2.5, maybe 3 places that were represented. Why? I don't know, but it seems like it wasn't as vast of a location. The core, right? Maybe it was the core.
And then additionally, that why the 3 years?
Right.
He wasn't born into this position. He had to get into this position, and it takes some time to control that entire area.
Yeah, great. Yeah, Seth, and then Rebecca, and then Stevie, and then we'll go to the next verse, maybe. Oh, and then Marshall.
Okay, just briefly, like why the Medes? Well, the whole story of Cyrus the Great is he was kind of nobility, but the Persians were a subject people under Median Empire, and then he overthrew the Median leadership, and so they're kind of still an established regional power, but the Persians are now the head.
I was going to comment on the use of the word mishteh, so emphasizing that it's a drinking banquet is perhaps important to emphasize the drinking part, because that foreshadows the importance of the drinking, and the king gets drunk and Vashti's dismissed, and there's an opening for the new queen. So mishteh is a foreshadowing.
Yeah, and when we get to the piece with Vashti in 4 months, it's not very far away in the verses, but we might not get there for a while. It's really interesting to see how any of these actions actually led to that, because Vashti, as some of you have learned with me before, I actually think Vashti gets a bad rap. I think Vashti should have been a more prominent character, and kids don't... Well, sometimes, I guess, dress up as Vashti, but no one's named Vashti. Lots of people are named Esther. Some people are named Vashti, Matt's telling me. Oh, really? Name Vashti? Well, then they're doing it right. Because I think she really gets a bad rap. And I think to your point, Rebecca, part of the reason that we think that this is, wow, you're both staying next to each other. I didn't realize that. I should have sat next to you. We could have all been Rebecca's together. Oh, yeah, sorry. Call me next time before Minion, and I'll get dressed just like you. But the idea of understanding kind of the subtext for how we then tell the story. Of course, this is the same in Torah as well, right? We in our minds have an idea of why something happened based off of holding on to things like, oh, they were drinking so much, so that's why Vashti was treated that way. But when we look in the actual text, it'll be interesting to see, was that really why, or were there other reasons? So hold on to that comment, because I'm not going to say that you're incorrect. It's a really intentional word to use, but it'll be interesting to see if it really does kind of trickle down to the behaviors of Vashti. Marshall.
I have a copy of the Sanchino Press commentary on Megillat Esther, which was published in 1946.
Okay.
And there's a interesting perception here, historical perception, talking about Bishnat Shalosh L'Molcho, where it says, in the 3rd year, Herodotus tells of a great gathering of satraps in Susa in Xerxes' 3rd year to make arrangements for the attack on Greece 2 years later.
All right.
So here's an external source.
Yeah, that's...
So could it be that the author,
Herman said that, yeah.
Could it be that the author of our scroll read Herodotus?
Given that we think that the authorship, we were talking about this before everybody was in the room, but we attribute the authorship to the people who were actually in this text itself. So it's possible that there was recognition of it. It's also possible that it went the other way. And it's also just possible that some of this was kind of normal life, right? That there were just certain things that were done, to Seth's point, that there were certain like cultural things that were just done by kingdoms, by kings, that ended up being, excuse me, looking like they were mirrored, but just regular happenstance. That I don't know, because I don't know that part of history well enough to know. But it's possible. I don't think it's a copy, though, unless we believe that Mordechai and Esther didn't actually write down all of these things and put them into the Megillah. Okay, we're going to go on to verse 4. Oh, Stevie, sorry, I did call on you. Sorry.
Thanks. I don't want to read too much into the lack of a vav or the presence of a vav, because, in some cases in manuscripts that can be inconsistent. But given the text as we have it, which is probably, accurate and consistent, Paras Umadai having a vav, meaning those two are, two things of the same kind, and hapartamim not having a vav seems to mean it could be like a term like that applies to both of those, whether like it's a category they both belong to or describing their relationship in some way. Or it could be hapartamim v'sarei hamidinot as like a different whole part of the sentence. It seems the structure of the sentence doesn't lend itself to there being like a tripartite anything. Also, it's worth pointing out that elsewhere in the Bible, Persia Media get mixed up, and I think it's Darius that the Bible misattributes as to, so, it
could have been like Trinidad and Tobago, Bosnia,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. That's very possible. Okay, verse 4. Look, moving right along. I just want to call myself out on something. When I decided that we were going to do Megillah with Rashi, and by the way, I know how Rabbi Kligfeld's class goes. I'm very well aware. For whatever reason, I was very naive, and I was like, oh, we're going to do Megillat Esther with Rashi, and we're going to be done before Purim. Here we are. Verse 4 of chapter 1. Purim's on Monday. So unless we're going to do this every minute of the day until Monday. Only a few. Okay, anyway. I was just sitting there imagining everyone was going to read the Megillah and have all this knowledge in their brains, and you will for like 5 verses, and it'll be good. Okay. All right. Behar. Oh, does someone else want to read? I'm glad you're all laughing. Yeah, Matt. Use the microphone.
בהראותו את עושר כבוד מלכותו ואת יקר תפארת גדולתו ימים רבים 80 ומאת יום.
Great.
So in with a display of the richness and the glory of his reign, and at the value of his riches, tiferet gdulato, of the rich and the riches of his greatness, yamim rabim shmonim, for 180 days, many days adding up to 180.
Great. And I appreciate that you translated it in your own way, because the English here actually turns everything on its head just so that it makes more syntactic sense. But I appreciate that you did it word by word. I'm just going to read the English translation just so we have it in our brains. For no fewer than 180 days, he displayed the vast riches of his kingdom and the splendid glory of his majesty. So this was not a college party, right? This was a very, very long party. Now, we all know that time is a thing, and who knows, and was it actually 180 days like we count our days? I don't know, but it was a long time, right? And that's what they're trying to explain to us here, is that it was a long time. It wasn't one day. It wasn't a few hours. It was many, many, many days that spanned over weeks and months to be able to do all of this. Okay, so then Rashi's comment, does someone want to read it? It's 5 words. Stevie, thank you so much.
Yamim Rabim Asal Lahem Ishteh. Like for these length, many days. Those are when he makes the banquet.
Great.
So,
do you want to say something about it?
Then the next one says he gave the banquet. After that,
the next one says he gave the banquet. What do you mean? At the end of this period. Oh, the next verse. Oh, okay. Wait, don't go on. I was like, I do not see what you're talking about. Yeah, Tova.
Just reading this, it really seems to add to the sense from the 3rd verse that this is in the 3rd year of his reign. The picture that I get is of having consolidated for 3 years his power. And now he's pulling together the core ruling class, the people who potentially could be his real rivals, bringing them now that he's secure, and then also keeping them there for 180 days, which undercuts whatever power they have locally where they came from. So it's very much this very calculated power play. Yeah.
Right, Ken was closer. Yeah, exactly. Okay, Larry. I know. Veer this mic. Yeah.
Diane said after the last session, everybody's staking out their territory in terms of how they do. So one of my territories is I like to step back, right, instead of looking at the verse. So if you step back, what's going on here is we've got this vast empire, and when somebody said it takes a long time, maybe Barry or someone, it takes a long time to get there. And what's going on here is not one big banquet or one big feast that everybody's going to. There's like an open bar for this amount of time. And as all the different provinces, the representatives are coming to different provinces, they're going. Now, if we look ahead, because we're allowed just to look at it for a second, and then now we're going to turn to the residents of Shushan.
Great.
And they get their chance because they didn't have a chance because it was more important. Somebody else, Rick or somebody else said something about the different, it was Leonard. I don't know, whoever it was.
Norm.
It was Norm. It was Norm.
Yeah.
about right. It was talking about the difference between the government and in Shushan, etc. So first he turns to his allies internationally, and now in a minute we're going to turn to the power locally.
Great. And one thing that Larry just pointed out that I was also going to read in this elucidation, not extrapolation, of Rashi, is that we are imagining, because we're living in the 21st century, we are imagining that everybody took a plane and arrived somewhere on the same day. But what we have to recognize is that not everybody arrived there on the same day. So it was an open door policy. Like they said, it was an open bar. Maybe that too. But it was, people were arriving when they could. And the way that I'm actually imagining it, and this is somewhat to Tova's point, is that it was almost like a museum, right? That you would come in when you could, you would see that which you either needed to see or be wined and dined in the way that you needed to be. And then you probably left. You probably didn't stay for all of these days. But the king was there, was present and able to do what he needed to do to be with his friends and also to make his enemies potentially his friends, or at least keep them in eyesight and earshot, so that they knew what he had amassed and what, where he was quite literally sitting, but also what he could do. Diane.
I just want to point out that rather than being an open bar, the drink of choice in societies before our modern one was not water. It was alcohol, because it was the only thing that really didn't make people sick.
Right.
So,
What do you mean not modern?
So the phrase the riches.
Yeah.
Some commentators say that and this is I'll say it first and what's significant. That these were the golden items taken from the Holy Temple, and somehow the Israelites, our Jewish history, was important, and bringing the leaders from all the 127 provinces to come and witness these riches. There's something underlying here that we are more significant in this story than just the Haman part of it. That the whole thing, and he had to wait. He had to wait beyond the 70 years to know that we were not going to be redeemed. So then he could do this. So our history is essential, underlying this whole story.
Okay, I'm just going to call on Rachel 1 second, just so I don't forget, and then Tova. Rachel Green, or Norm, or whoever.
Yeah, it's me with this comment.
Great.
The question that now you can see me.
Oh, hello.
The question or comment that I had is thinking of it not only as a meeting of the wealthy industrialists and the politicians from the various provinces of the kingdom, but almost like a trade fair. My wine is better than your wine, and the wine from Egypt is going to be better than the wine from Syria or Medea or whatever. But I'm thinking of these rulers coming to this big event. Yes, part of the purpose of the event was for Ahasuerus to say, I'm the boss.
Right.
But another purpose was for the various provinces to display whatever it is they do.
Sure.
And I thought maybe thinking of it as a trade fair in addition to our other images would be, might give us some insight on what it was like.
Yeah, great. Thank you for sharing that. Tova.
Just real quickly to the point of this, the actions that we've been seeing representing sort of a power play, a consolidation of power. Thinking forward, it casts a lot of light on why the reaction to Vashti is as strong as it is.
Can you say more about what?
Well, I didn't want to, because I mean, that it was the humiliation of the king, if you will, the undercutting of his power in front of these people that he's brought together to demonstrate his power that was so damaging.
Right, and that she actually is one of his riches. Right. Okay. One of the things, I know we're talking about Rashi, but I'm going to just bring in Ibn Ezra for a second. Ibn Ezra very much points out that it's important for us to know that this was not just wealth of like a wealthy person, but this was the only type of wealth that could be amassed by kings. So it was somehow specific to a kingdom, right? Even the wealthiest of people who we know don't have the same kind of riches, let's call them, as like the queen or king in this point of England, right? There are jewels and crowns and things that are seen as royal riches, as opposed to what we might find to be riches, which is money, stocks, property, et cetera, which is a different kind of riches, of course. One doesn't necessarily have to be different than the other, but it's interesting that Ibn Ezra is pointing out, amongst other things that he says, but that this wealth is very specific to the kings. The one thing I want to say, hold on, Leonard, right before you speak. Larry, specifically, look at this verse. Do you see what I highlighted here? The Osher Kavod. What does that remind you of? Kavod milfanecha. Right. Can you tell us where that's from?
The original source, or where is it in the Siddur?
Yeah, where is it in the Siddur?
The Siddur is before we do the Shirat Hayam.
Right.
Introduction to it.
So the reason I called on Larry is because every morning at Daily Minyan, he says this line out loud when he walks over to give some tzedakah, which I'm very aware of because I sit right near the tzedakah box. But I just wanted to point it out because I think it's an interesting way of recognizing that this was something that we are aware of in all types of malchut, right? In all types of kingship, that there is osher and there is kavod. There are riches and there is honoring, right? And that osher, by the way, if spelled with an aleph, which of course it can be, it could have been, etc., does come out to be something that is not riches, but is joy or happiness. And so there's a way for us to also think about, I'm not trying to say that this is incorrect, but just in a way for us to, especially in a time when texts were just being heard and not being read, right? It's interesting to think about, what did it mean to have like the joy, the riches, the happiness? What was that creating as kind of a milieu of sorts for this type of scene to be set up? So I just wanted to point that out because it is an interesting line to use here, but also then to have mirrored in our liturgy, which I knew that Larry would recognize, but I didn't know if anybody else would. Okay, Leonard, you might get the last word.
Last word.
Very good. Ha ha ha.
Sena Urena has an interesting take on this.
Great.
That's the Yiddish storytelling intended for women of the stories of the Bible over here. I'll just read you the translation for this line over here. I'll have you do that. All right, so he's asking about the 180 days. He made banquets and displayed great wealth for 180 days. Here one asks the question, why didn't he simply say 6 months? He might have shown his treasures, but 180 days is 6 months, as he later says concerning clothing the women for 6 months. So here's the interesting part. The reason is that this teaches us that for 180 days, he showed different treasures and novelties every day.
Wow. That seems like a lot of work. Marshall, did you want to say something?
There's Christian Hebraeus Wallace who commented in the Sanchino again, there was a Christian Hebraeus by the name of Rollinson who said that this may be a series of entertainments, which we were alluding to successive relays of guests. It's unlikely that the king's officials could have stayed away from their posts for all this period.
Right.
You were right that the king was there.
Right.
But there's a whole series of people who came through.
Sure. Okay, so we're not going to even pretend like we can go on to the next verse in the next 2 minutes. So we're not. But I do hope. I know that it was naive of me to think we were going to get through the whole Megillah. I honestly thought that Purim was later. I think was what was going on in my brain. I don't think I thought it was 2 weeks later. Right. I was thinking Purim's next year too. Right. But I do hope that you sit in listening to the Megillah this year and you think about these 4 verses, but also in general, I think Larry's point is really well taken. And again, one of the reasons that I wanted to do this in Rabbi Kligfeld's absence, that this really is an important and deep text. It's not just a kid's story. And so I hope that while you're sitting and listening to the Megillah, wherever you are doing that you are able to focus in on the depth of the story and the characters, and think about, like, where is this mimicked? This is not a holiday where you can't have your phones out. Look things up. See if there's something that pops up for you, whether that's historical or cultural or something that we've spoken about in this room. And just, I hope that it enhances your Purim experience, and we'll continue to learn it even after Purim is over. So an early Shabbat Shalom to all of you. Thanks for learning, and I'll see you next week.
You've been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast website or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on Temple Beth Am, Los Angeles, please visit www.tbala.org.